Get ready for some upbeat banter, plenty of laughs, and a whole lot of love for the game and our team. This is Buds and Blue Jays. And now your hosts, Riley McConnell and Jesse Burrell.
Good afternoon, everybody. It is Sunday, July 21st, and welcome to episode 195 of Buds and Blue Jays. It's your place for all things related to the Toronto Blue Jays. I'm Jesse Burrell, joined as always by Riley McConnell. And Riley, we are back. The Toronto Blue Jays are back, and we thought maybe, just maybe, the All-Star break might be what this team needs to turn things around, to get the gears going, and really set this Toronto Blue Jays team off in the right direction. And Riley, we could have all predicted it, but it was more of the same from the Toronto Blue Jays in this series. We lose 2 out of 3 to the Detroit Tigers. We end up going, I believe, 2-5 against the Tigers this season without seeing Tariq Skubal in a single one of those starts. So not ideal from the Toronto Blue Jays, but it's par for the course. We got a lot to get to on this episode, including Bo Bichette getting hurt again. We got multi-home runs from George Springer and Vladimir Guerrero Jr. in this series, and we are less than 2 weeks away from the trade deadline, and all those things are turning for the Toronto Blue Jays. But first, Riley, how was your All-Star break, my man? Do anything wild?
All-Star break was fantastic. We took Toronto by storm, headed up. Scott Belfour at the Walk-Off podcast knows how to host in any sort of festivities. Big shout out to him. Again, what a great event. Had a lot of good baseball minds in conversation about where this team is going. And I'll start with that, Jesse. Where the hell is this team going?
Great question. Yep.
I mean, listen, I thought for sure, maybe, let's not even think about our record. Let's just think about, we got the All-Star break. We're playing a series against the Tigers. It's a series we should probably win. It would feel good to take it. And, we lost the first 2. And this one, if it wasn't for a great catch by Dalton Varsho, probably is getting us swept. We did not bounce back. In fact, I think the wind is, not completely out of the sails right now, Jesse, but we're in a lot of trouble, man, from performance, injuries, all of the above. Very messy way to bring us back into baseball after the All-Star break.
Yeah, but it was kind of what we expected from the series, right? Some good, some bad, and the pitching was just okay. The hitting went cold, but we got enough to squeak one game out of the series. It's ho-hum, more of the same from the Toronto Blue Jays. But with that being said, Riley, let's give it away to something positive. Who was your player of the series for the Toronto Blue Jays here?
Well, I mean, there's only one correct answer for this, Jesse. It's a guy who has been our best player as of late, and you could argue that he was the league's worst player for a time this season. That's George Springer. He had 10 total bases in today's ball game. Double dong day for George Springer. And he's put on a real show. He also homered in the first game of this series as well, and got a hit and an RBI in the second game. Obviously, did not, kind of in vain. We didn't win those ball games, but a huge day today for George Springer, and why we won that ball game. We salvaged the victory there. And I know that there's been adjustment made to George Springer's kind of at bat, where he's putting his hands when he takes his swings. It looks really smooth. That pitch he got, that changeup low, he drove that pitch out to the pull side. It was nice to see George Springer get his bat head around and absolutely launch a baseball. It takes me back to, pre-COVID George Springer. I think George had an unbelievable between 2017 and 2019. 2019, I think especially, where he had 39 home runs. I mean, it's nice to see that. There's always, they pull up the graphic, second all time in leadoff home runs, gets one more on that list. I don't think he'll ever beat Ricky Henderson, but George, a very unique player, and in the twilight of his career, he's really gotten on a hot streak, Jesse. So we have to.
Isn't that amazing?
I came out of listen. It didn't come out of nowhere, but with the way the season was going, I thought it was going to be a total meltdown. I didn't know what the future held for George Springer, and I mean, let's take the positives when we can, man. And it's a huge positive to see George Springer swinging the bat well.
I was thoroughly impressed from George Springer, not because the results are looking good, like 10 total bases for him in this series, but his first 2 home runs both came off the fastball. And we have talked a little bit since George Springer has made his adjustments, how he's really attacking that fastball. He's trying to hit it to the pull side, hit in the air with authority. Like George Springer put in the work from the coaches and able to do so, and it showed results in this series. But I am most impressed in his third at bat after he had already taken 2 Detroit Tigers fastballs deep. He saw 3 straight curveballs in that third at bat and still ripped a hanging curveball down the line for a double. That is what hitting should be. And it's all about making adjustments, knowing he wasn't going to throw you a fastball and still being able to do damage from George Springer. His last 20 games, Riley, OPS is just shy of 1,200. Like it's been nothing but phenomenal from George Springer. I am thoroughly impressed. And I honestly, just like you, kind of wrote him off. I thought we were never going to see this. So this gives me hope that there could be more left in the tank for years for George Springer.
I mean, it's the age-old tale, right, Jesse? Hitting is all timing. Pitching is trying to upset timing. I agree with you. That one he roped for a double. Great slide, by the way, into second base. I didn't know.
You've been good at that. Yeah.
I didn't know. Georgia very athletic. Is very athletic. Don't get me wrong. The swings look ugly at times, but not as of late, man. He's still. Let's be honest, guys. I mean, he's accumulated 1 WAR on the season. He still has an OPS plus below 100. I mean, he's improving his stats. If you can still look back and say, you know, this was not a good year for George Springer. But at the same time, too, he's doing his best to kind of salvage this in a season that seems very lost. It was a very good thing for George Springer. Jesse, you predicted that there was going to be regression this year. And I totally agreed with you, man. Yep. At the start of this, when we said there's going to be, he's on the wrong side of 30, as you say, and we're going to see some things this year, maybe that aren't in George Springer's benefit. And he really, really went downhill fast. And he's starting to crawl and climb his way back up. It's really refreshing to see that in this kind of sea of all things going wrong for the Toronto Blue Jays.
Yeah, let's see how George Springer continues with the second half of the season here, because if he shows there is this type of hitter in here, it'll go a long way for having the Blue Jays being able to compete and be a good team in 2025. Riley, my player of the series is another one of our big dogs. It's the player we really needed to do well and did do well in this series. The other Toronto Blue Jay who hit 2 home runs in this series, and that was Vladimir Guerrero Jr., including a baseball he hit off of the scoreboard in left center field, 117.5 miles per hour off of the bat. It literally broke a panel off of the board there. The only other hitter I've seen do that is Shohei Ohtani, who literally ripped one off the scoreboard and broke a panel like that. So that was fantastic. He even got into another game at third base, his 4th of the season. When I see Vladimir Guerrero Jr. hitting like this and driving that ball and hitting it into the air like we know that he can, had a double in the finale too, by the way, to get his extra base hits total up, it makes me feel like that MVP Vlad is still in there somewhere, right? Like we are still seeing signs of glimpses of that guy we know can get hot and carry this team. His swing might look the best over these past 2 weeks, and I think it has since that 2021 season. And this gives me hope, again, like we kind of said with George Springer, that if he can put this together and show that this is still in his skill set, it can go a long way for the Blue Jays being really good in 2025. So positives from Vladimir Guerrero Jr.
I like when we can do these things, Jesse, and sit down and say Vladimir Guerrero Jr. had a good series. It gives us the best chance we can to win baseball games. We didn't do that. We got a lot of other issues going on in-house, and
understatement. Yes.
right now, when we're really hard, everyone is very hard and critical of Vladimir Guerrero Jr. and kind of rightfully so. I mean, we don't know where to gauge this guy. What kind of player is he going to be? Based off the discrepancy in his numbers. I mean, here's what I think, Jesse. I don't think he's going to come back and finish with statistics like his MVP runner-up season, but I think you can kind of take it and say, oh, he's maybe going to finish with stats close to this 2022 campaign.
Sure,
perhaps. I will take it as well. Maybe doesn't hit 35 home runs this year. Although again, we aren't a team with guys with 30 home runs. That really irks me when we should be. But Vladdy's getting hits. I mean, he had another double in today's game, so maybe some batted ball luck. He hit it. He kind of, flared it over to the opposite field, but also then you get those instances where he's hitting baseballs over 430 feet. So the end of the day, the power's there. We know the power's real, Jesse. It's about capitalizing on those pitches he can to hit for those extra bases. And honestly, man, so far so good, because we need Vladdy to be a run producer for this team to go anywhere. And I just realized too with that, I mean, in the 7-3 loss in game 2, Vladdy had a three hit game. So that goes with the, yes, he's hitting for, when he can hit for power, but his counting stats on the year are great, man. I mean, he's kind of a front runner for a Silver Slugger as the first baseman of the AL, except for the fact it's weird he doesn't have those home run numbers, but everything else seems to be there. It's really hard to be critical of Vladimir Guerrero Jr. Just for not hitting, hitting it over the fence. Chicks dig the long ball, as they say, man. Well, I still dig Vladimir Guerrero Jr. right now, even if, he had a multi-home run series. That's great. I hope it kind of trends in that direction. But also, I'm going to be a little bit easier on him because he has done well to hit the ball all season.
Yeah, I'm very impressed with what I've seen from Vladimir Guerrero Jr. Look, this team is always going to go as far as he carries us. And right now with this Toronto Blue Jays team, like, wins and losses don't really matter anymore. Like, we're not going anywhere. So basically it's just, hey, if we win the game, that's great. And if we lose, what lessons did we take away from that? And I think we've taken some lessons from both George Springer and Vladimir Guerrero Jr. in this series. Riley, last player of the, I guess, our three little positives, our player of the series. I just wanted to give a good thumbs up and a welcome back to one of our best relief pitchers, and that is Jimmy Garcia, who made his debut. They was slowly working his way back pre-All-Star break. They decided to give him the break and came back, and he looked fantastic in this series. 3 up, 3 down, 15 pitches, 3 whiffs, and 3 strikeouts for Jimmy Garcia, which is absolutely what you want to see from one of the Toronto Blue Jays trade targets. You want to see him pitch as well as you can for these next 9 days and increase his value so that way the Jays can maximize the return. So welcome back, Jimmy Garcia.
If there's a pitcher who stepped up in a big way this year, it is Garcia. I mean, it started in the spring, Jesse. I remember, I think I texted you or tweeted something. It was like, did I read that right? Did Garcia just throw triple digits? It kind of started with there. He had a great spring training, and the wheels started to fall off and fell off early. But Garcia pleasantly has, I think, surprised a lot of people. We needed someone to hold it together in the bullpen right now, because there are some guys, Jesse, and I'm not going to pick on anyone specifically. Just the bullpen as a whole has been terrible this year. So the fact that Garcia is back, it's a thumbs up that he, went 3 up, 3 down with 3 Ks in his first appearance back. But he's going to get those high leverage moments. There's no other guy right now I trust more, even after the injury. He's proved that he is our closer. Well, for the time being, Jesse, 9 days before the trade deadline as well. It's looming, and we will see changes eventually. We don't know exactly who yet, but this team might look a bit different in a week or so.
Yeah, in terms of maximizing the trade value for this guy, you want to see them come up here and pitch well and perform so that way the Jays can get the most that they can for these guys. Before we get into some of the trade deadline stuff we're going to get to in this episode, there was one major piece of news that did come out of this series, and that was unfortunate for our shortstop. Bo Bichette was removed from the game in the series with a right calf strain. It's the same calf that he's been dealing with for a while now. He's really been struggling with it, and ultimately he did take an MRI, came back with a calf strain. He will miss, quote-unquote, multiple weeks with this injury, which means he might come back for a little bit in September, but we're not going to see him for the rest of this month and probably most of August as well. Riley, we can take this moment here to talk a little bit about Bo Bichette's full season, because it does not seem like he's going to be traded at the deadline. It does not seem like he's going to be making a major impact for the rest of this season. So let's take about a minute and a half here and just take a look at Bo Bichette's whole season, because a lot of people, including our friend Keegan, thought he was going to get MVP votes. You and I are on record on this podcast saying Bo Bichette is going to have one of the monster seasons, lead the American League in hits again.
200 hits, Adam.
Yeah, exactly. And ultimately, I don't think anybody, even if you thought he was going to be worse, did not see this type of year coming for Bo Bichette. Riley, do we think this is just going to be one of those seasons when we look back at his end of his career, we say we just throw out 2024, he'll be back to normal next year, or are we worried that this is more of a downward trend for what Bo Bichette's going to be for his career?
I mean, at 26 years old, Jesse, you really got to hope that this is one of those, whoops, we had a bad year, back to the drawing board, you're still Bo Bichette, Maybe there's some bad luck in there. Maybe we, work on some psyche stuff at the plate, change up the stance, kind of change the way we approach maybe some outside pitches, take a little bit more. There's definitely things I like about Bo Bichette even this year. Not a ton, Jesse. I mean, the bat to ball skill is still great, but again, that's kind of counterintuitive with some of the swing decisions he makes. And honestly, man, when you thought that the defense, was starting to look a lot better, I mean, it's certainly not the best of the best. He's not in line to win a Gold Glove or to be one of the higher defensive run save type guy. I mean, just looking at his stats now, yeah, nothing spectacular in the defensive category, but Bo Bichette's a top of the order guy. Again, guy who's going to get bad on ball. And I think he'll work this out, get the calf injury taken care of, and come back, in 2025, essentially. I think this season's a wash. Come back in 2025. Let's figure this out.
Yeah, I think that's the smart play. Like, if you're looking under the hood, which we've done a few times for Bo Bichette here, it's like his walks have actually gone up. His strike rates have gone down. It's really been a quality of contact issue. He's just not barreling up the baseball, which is a hand-eye coordination thing, maybe. Maybe it's something to do with the swing. He just can't get up there. But that, to me, makes me feel like that's something that can be fixed, right? And isn't something that's going to drag Bo Bichette down for the rest of his career, for example. Now, last episode, Riley, we talked, hey, has Bo Bichette checked out, right? Like, it seems like he's mentally gone. We've seen a few comments circulating throughout the Blue Jays rumor mill that he has kind of accepted that maybe his long-term future isn't here in Toronto. But look, he's going to be here around for next year, and we're going to see. And hopefully Bo Bichette, just puts this year behind him, can hit the ground running next season. And whether or not we trade him at the deadline or whether or not he helps the Blue Jays become a competitive team in 25, that is what we need to see from Bo Bichette. And it would not surprise me one bit if we get into the offseason and all we hear is just, Bo Bichette was just hurt all year and was never able to put it together.
I mean, Jesse, I would like to think of every Toronto Blue Jays guy as a team guy, but at what point do you go, I've played here and we're not winning? And when do you become frustrated? Because, okay, for instance, look at Mike Trout in the Angels. He might go down as, one of the best or the best ever to never win a World Series as a player in surely what will be a Hall of Fame career. Now, Bo Bichette possibly could have been on a Hall of Fame path and still might be if he, kind of gets those 200 hit marks and things like that, batting titles. It's not out of the question, Jesse, but you got to think that maybe, it's at what age, if he's 33 and the Blue Jays haven't won yet and he might request a trade. I mean, the guy's 26. He's not a spring chicken anymore. I mean, he's gaining service time. He'll have free agency after next season. So, I mean, 2026, that's the end of the clock, man. And I mean, I don't think he gets dealt in the offseason, but I think Bo Bichette's future might be hitting that free agency market, maybe not coming back with the Blue Jays and getting a big payday. And with a competitor, I think I can't blame Bo Bichette for wanting to win, and I understand where his frustration is, but it falls on him a little bit too. Actually, more like a lot of it, because he has not performed yet. He has not performed this year. I know that you want to play, you want to be a competitor, you want to be a winner. Bo Bichette has not been a winner this year, which is unfortunate because I had big expectations. A lot of people did going into this year for him. So we're obviously not going to see him dealt. He's injured. So he is probably going to remain on our team until next season. And I don't want to even get there yet because who knows? It could be wildly different.
Yeah, we're going to talk a lot of Bo Bichette come this offseason, right? So we can dive into that more as we go, but just kind of put our thoughts on it now as he goes into this extended injury rest right now. All right. I want to talk one more player before we dive into the things. And Davis Schneider, Riley, and we've talked a little bit about Davis Schneider over the past few years about how he's been a very streaky hitter, right? How he comes in, he lights the world on fire, then he goes cold, and then he heats back up, and then he goes a little cold again. I've dug into his little stats, Riley, and on the season, the numbers don't look terrible. 221, 10 home runs, 702 OPS. He's a league average hitter if you take his whole course of the season. But since the start of June, 182, 248 on base, 282 slugging. He only has 5 extra base hits over the time. So what do we take about Davis Schneider here? Because I thought there was a stretch there where you and I thought Davis Schneider was one of the untouchables on this Toronto Blue Jays team. Two questions, I suppose. One, do we still feel that way about Davis Schneider? And two, do we think there is more of a hot streak coming, more of an upside here, or is this just the type of player Davis Schneider is going to be?
So I think it remains the same for me. If we're obviously going to go through a rebuild, we want guys with lots of team control. And
Which he has, yep.
Schneider is still a fan favorite. I think you're going to tick a lot of people off because I don't think there is a reason to trade a Davis Schneider. I get that he's streaky. Well, that maybe we kind of reassess what his role is on the team. Maybe he doesn't get every day at bats, things like that. The untouchables are guys who have come up through our system that are on renewable contracts, that are pretty much with our club. It could be your Stuart Baroas, could be your Spencer Horwitz. Those guys are sticking around, in my opinion. You need that kind of next core. Now, they're not an elite core, but it's something. Something is there. We need to fill those roster spots, and that's kind of what it is. And is Davis Schneider a top of the lineup bat, or is he more of a replacement level guy that can play multiple positions that still possesses value for your franchise? Very much so. And then if you get those really hot streaks sprinkled in, then that's exactly what you have. You have a streaky player. I can make the argument too, Jesse, and it's another guy who's, kind of floundered quite a bit, Danny Jansen, another extremely streaky guy, totally different, contract thing right now. I mean, we're talking about Jansen now. The next episode very well could be farewell Danny Jansen. But for me, it's not farewell Davis Schneider. He's gotta be on this team when we come full circle here. I think he's earned it. And yeah, he's a streaky guy. Has not impressed me as of late, obviously. But he's gotta be around, Jesse.
Right. So you don't sound too concerned then about the cold streak that Davis Schneider has been on lately, right? You still feel like,
absolutely not.
Good guy, run him out there.
Absolutely not. Yeah, okay. Run him out there, man. That's kind of who he is. Let him do his thing. Let him develop a little bit more.
Okay. I still think there is a little bit of concern, mostly just because he's started chasing a lot of pitches now, which we never saw him do last season and even the first half of this year. But if that is the case, and that is the main reason why he's not producing, it should be a very simple fix for Davis Schneider to do. And remember, he still hasn't played one full year in the big leagues. He didn't come up here until probably mid-August last season, right? And we're not even into August yet. So it's still like his quote-unquote rookie season for Davis Schneider here in the big leagues. He'll go through some bumps and bruises once he figures it out around the league. He reminds me a lot, actually, of Teoscar Hernandez, his first year here. Remember when he struggled, he was hitting around 200 and we thought, all right, like, what is this Teo going to be? And then all of a sudden he found a little bit of a stretch, started hitting for power. And then obviously Teoscar Hernandez has turned into an all-star, a home run derby champion, right? That's kind of the career path I can see Davis Schneider kind of taking. You take your little bit of lumps now, you figure it out, the power runs around. Next thing you know, he's a perennial 25 home run hitter a season for Davis Schneider. So I think I'm with you. Let him in there, let him play, and see what we can get from him.
That sounds very appealing. I will take a guy in the lower 200 side of the batting average, but 25 home runs, because he's a household name in Toronto. People love him. Fans love him. But as far as the MLB goes, I mean, if he wins Player of the Week and pops off and then hits kind of 230 with 6 extra base hits over the next month, don't be surprised. You're still getting production out of him, but we do need him to be a league average bat to keep him in this lineup.
Just think, too, the Blue Jays are playing Davis Schneider a lot in left field and second base, and left field's a position he never really played before, so he's probably putting a lot of his mental energy and practice into becoming a better outfielder. Give him the offseason to put in that work, and he can really come in and improve on the bat, and I would bet that next year for Davis Schneider is going to be, better, if not significantly better than this one going forward. So I'm happy to see that. Before we talk about any other players, Riley, there was a video going around from our friend Leslie Knope who shared the fans in right center field got a Fire Ross Atkins chant going. I think it's the first time we have heard that at Rogers Center. The fans are spoken. They're feeling the frustration just like we've been saying here for months now on this show. Do you have a take on the fans chanting Fire Ross?
Good for the fans. I don't know who some of them were personally, but I think I think if I was there, I probably might have joined into the festivities. That's never a good thing when your fans start to turn on you. It's one of the worst looks in sports when the home crowd boos, jeers a player, manager, management, whatever it is. It's not a good look, man. That can't happen. That just simply can't happen. In my opinion, he's got to be on the way out. This year has not been good. Again, I'll say it, man. Going into this year, my expectations versus where we are has the most discrepancy from when I can, as far as I can remember watching baseball, because in the mid 2000s, I knew we weren't going to be a great baseball team. I knew who was on the other dugout and who was in our division. But this year, high expectations, and we've totally floundered. I mean, and you got to put a lot of the blame on Ross Atkins in some of the maybe the personnel choices he's brought over. Certain trades, perhaps. I don't want to single any player out, of course. And it, because it's not just on him, it is some of the players too, but it's not a good look, man. You can't have, you got to have your fan base behind you, the Blue Jays fan base right now. And I'm on board with it. We don't have a lot of trust in our management right now. And that's easy to see from being on the inside, from being on the outside. I mean, it hasn't been a good year. Atkins, his days should be numbered, and we'll see what he does in this deadline too.
Yeah, we talked for each of the last 2 trade deadlines. Like, the Blue Jays are running out of time with this core. You need to do enough to maximize your core. He has not done that, plain and simple. And if you can't do that, then you've had your chance to run with this core. Time to let someone else steer the ship. Jesse Teresa in the chat says James Click is there for a reason. Let him step in. He was the guy who ran the Houston Astros to let them go into their World Series runs. He is on our roster. I do feel like if we were to fire him, he'll probably be his spot to step in. But I also wonder, just because Mark Shapiro and him are such good buddies, that they'll let him run out the contract and give it one more shot in 2026, which, if that does happen, that'll be a big mistake. And you and I will be talking about it here on the offseason. Any more quick thoughts on that before we talking about the rest of the players this series?
No, let's go back to the players. Okay. Done talking about management.
Me too. I want to give some notes on just some players that the Blue Jays are likely going to be trading within the next 2 weeks. So how they're playing now, between now and then, are going to matter so much. We already talked Jimmy Garcia, who looked good. You did touch on Danny Jansen a little bit, and I went through his game logs, Riley. And since the start of June, he's hitting 182. He's slugging 282, and he only has 1 home run at that time. He does not. Now, we know the back of the baseball card for Danny Jansen says he's been one of the better hitting catchers over the past few years, but he really has not been a good hitter for 2 months now. I think he went 0 for 8 in this series here as well. Like, if you're a team and you need a catcher, which, might I add, there aren't many of them who are currently in playoff positions, and you are looking to get Danny Jansen, like, are you sure that you are actually still getting an offensive impact for your team? Like, I'm not certain he is. And I almost feel like the Blue Jays might be better off just let's keep Danny Jansen, because I think he's more valuable here than he would be in any other team in Major League Baseball.
I mean, unfortunately, Jesse, I think we're damned if we do, damned if we don't. If Jansen might finish the year out here and only have like a freaking 550 OPS, whatever number you want to imagine, but it's not going to be a good one. If on the off chance he gets hot and we don't trade him, that looks good. But he walks to free agency and he's going to sign a multi-year deal with a club to fill in a catcher spot that doesn't have a Alejandro Kirk, constantly kind of in your way of that top role. A team's going to love Danny Jansen. I don't think the Blue Jays have loved him enough. And not guys like you and me, but managers where they use Danny Jansen. I mean, listen, he hasn't hit that well. I mean, in the game today, there was some kind of basically Gausman got 2 strikes knocked off that were called balls. I feel like Kirk could have framed them better, possibly. I don't know. But if Jansen doesn't go at the deadline, I mean, he's going to free agency. It's either he's going in the next 8 days or he's going in November, essentially.
Right. So you don't think there's a chance then that the Blue Jays actually reach out and send a contract offer and extend Danny Jansen, do you?
Unfortunately, I don't. I would love to see it, man. I know what kind of a hitter Danny Jansen can be. And he's been kind of a shell of himself over the last little while. Since June, whatever you said, 2nd. It's a long time to be very unproductive. And I know it's, again, streaky type of player, man. But we need one of those streaks to happen, and we need it to happen real quick.
Yeah, and I'm not certain we're even going to get much. Trading catchers at the deadline is weird in MLB history, right? Because a team has to come in, you have to learn their whole pitching staff just to get ready for the postseason. So, I really do think the Blue Jays should probably extend Danny Jansen. And because he's already, we talked with Julia Cruz from MLB.com over this past weekend, and she was telling us, Danny Jansen has already earned his contract with how he prepares for these pitchers, right? The success of the Toronto Blue Jays pitching over these last few years is probably also loosely translated to how Danny Jansen has done behind the plate. And I think the Blue Jays would be a fool to not let that continue going into next season, because Brian Serven or Carson Kelly or whoever you sign as a free agent catcher, because you're going to have to sign a catcher if you let him go. I think it's just best for all parties involved if we bring Danny Jansen back. And plus, he just had a child, right? Let the child here. Teresa wants Joey Bart, which, hey, it's that, but that's the type of player you'd be looking for.
And that's making a trade there. It's hilarious. I can't believe you just said Carson Kelly. In my Blue Jays franchise I'm doing right now, he literally replaced Jansen. I try to do it as realistically, and who else? But yeah, a guy like that who's been around. And then you got Carson Kelly. I think he did he hit a home run today, or was that the one where Varsho caught? Doesn't matter. So. No. Good hitting catcher. Anyways, this isn't the Tigers podcast here. We'll skip that. It was a good. I know we lost these ball games 2 out of 3, but it's still there's some good takeaways. I'm just glad that baseball's back. The All-Star break is always very weird, especially after there's those couple days with no baseball. The Derby was fantastic. I love that Teo won it.
Mm-hmm.
Alec Bohm surprised the heck out of me. I thought he's
entertaining, Alec Bohm.
I thought he was going to hit 75 balls off the wall. I didn't think he had that launch angle in him. He's a great hitter, man. He's part of the reason the Phillies are absolutely tearing up that National League East. But I'm glad baseball's back. I know it's not the result that you and I hope for, but hey, we're back to watching some baseball again, man.
All right, let's talk a little bit about the starting pitchers in this series. We have 3: Chris Bassitt, Yusei Kikuchi, and Kevin Gausman. Bassitt on his line, 6 2/3 innings pitched, 7 hits, 5 earned runs, 6 strikeouts. Yusei Kikuchi, his line was 5 innings pitched, 4 earned runs, 5 hits, 2 walks, 8 strikeouts. And then Kevin Gausman today, 6 2/3 innings pitched, 5 hits, 4 earned runs, 3 walks, 5 strikeouts. Just quickly on all 3, Chris Bassitt was cruising until the 4th when he gave up 3, and then retired 11 in a row, then gave up another home run thanks to a bloop and a blast. So I think the line looks worse that he actually pissed, but he was pretty mad about it after it. And Yusei Kikuchi as well, who's now really struggled for his last 5 or 6 starts. I thought his line was also better. He left some base runners on. Trevor Richards came up, gave up a home run, so the earned runs looked worse than they did. And he already touched on Kevin Gausman today. He did get kind of bit on a few walks there that Danny Jansen couldn't squeeze it. And I thought, it was just kind of ho-hum for Kevin Gausman, more of the same, not as many strikes. The defense played well behind him and more of that. So do you have a takeaway on our 3 starting pitchers in this series?
Yeah, just because it's so fresh in my mind, Jesse. And it's something that when you're 12 years old, your coach says, they'll say nothing more important, but best pitch in baseball, strike 1.
Yep.
Gausman struggled in that inning, man. And in the 2 walks, giving up the hit, and then the 2 walks on some really uncompetitive pitches. I think the one walk was to Riley Green, who does walk a lot for a young player. Walked him on 4 pitches, though. That just can't happen.
4 pitch walks.
We got to get a strike over there. And then, of course, they hit a grand slam, which, I mean, Detroit had 2 grand slams in this series. I think that's kind of wacky in a lot of ways, back-to-back games. And Kikuchi charged with all the runs, but Trevor Richards did give up the grand slam, which really tough to watch, man. I think Kikuchi works his butt off, and he has just not gotten a good result as of late. I think Yusei Kikuchi, listen, everyone works to stay in the major leagues and do a great job. I think there's just another layer with Yusei Kikuchi in his work ethic and how he approaches a start. I really like when he doesn't show a ton of emotion. I like when he shows emotion on his face, though. It shows, that he's a person that basically has emotions, and then you can see frustration and things like that. It's just unfortunate he hasn't gotten the result as of late, man, because I think Yusei Kikuchi's having a fantastic year.
The Blue Jays really had a chance in this series to do what's best for their franchise, because if you look at the two best starting pitchers who are probably available on this trade deadline, it's Yusei Kikuchi and then it's Jack Flaherty, who the Blue Jays saw in game one of this series. Yusei Kikuchi got the strikeouts, but overall kind of struggled a bit. His line looks worse than it did. And Jack Flaherty looked like a Cy Young pitcher, right? I think he only allowed 4 Blue Jays base runners. Yeah.
Pre-COVID Jack Flaherty, when he was with the Cardinals, man. I think I've told you. I don't know if you were one of the guys that gave up on Jack Flaherty. I said Jack Flaherty would be back, and he looked fantastic, man. I mean, the Blue Jays, not a threatening offense at all times, but Jack Flaherty really did well against us. Not surprised also.
Yeah, so the Blue Jays are probably going to have to trade Kikuchi then to whatever team misses out on Jack Flaherty is probably going to be the way they go about this here. Yeah, interesting stuff. We'll really see how this follows going forward here. Trevor Richards hurt his trade value a little bit. And I want to shout out to Chad Green, who probably increased his trade value a little bit in this series. He was able to get 5 outs today. He pitched a clean inning in game 1. He did benefit from a nice long catch from Dalton Varsho there at the end of the thing. But if you look at the season numbers for Chad Green, he's really has pitched well. And I still think the Blue Jays should sell high on Chad Green, try to get what we can. I understand he's under team control for next year, but I do think if the Blue Jays were smart and they get an offer on a decent prospect for Chad Green, they should be looking to move him this deadline as well.
I mean, listen, with Chad Green, it's another guy who's kind of stepped into a bigger role. He had a 5-out save today. And because again, Garcia pitched the game before, sure. And it was Green's turn and he got the job done. That's kind of where it is. We've seen our blow games late into ball games because earlier in the year, it was Trevor Richards we trusted for a while and we kind of put him in different high leverage situations and he stunk and he kind of threw another clunker of an outing again. It seems that we can't have more than kind of 4 relief pitchers do well at the same time. We get like
That's it, yep.
We get like 2.5 maybe, but then he's kind of on its way out. It's really kind of unfortunate and sad in a way because relief pitchers, I don't want to call them a dime or a dozen. They're professional athletes. But if you're not pitching well and you're a relief pitcher, we saw what happened to Eric Swanson, unfortunately, this year. And like you find yourself in the minor leagues. If you suffer from control, prone to the long ball, whatever it is. So the fact that Chad Green, and who's one of our more seasoned relief pitchers, he was really good with the Yankees. I mean, if we need another guy that's not Yimi Garcia, it's going to be Chad Green.
Yeah, and that's why I think the Blue Jays should sell that to another team right now, right? Let the Blue Jays be as bad as possible over the next few years and let another team take in with Chad Green. Yeah. Just some thoughts in the bullpen here. Hey, shout out Ryan Burr, 4 up, 4 down, got every batter he faced. Brandon Littell got the 2 batters he faced in this series. Genesis Cabrera has been a lot better lately. He's got an ERA. I mean, his whip is still like 1.4, but he's got an ERA of mid-3s. He looked good in this series. He walked a guy on a pitch that was strike 3, so he should have had it there too. He's been getting some more high leverage relief role. He's lefty 1 now out of the pen for John Schneider. And you did mention it, Riley. Eric Swanson is back here, and he came up and he got the 9th in game 2 when the Jays were down 4, and he looked good. He went 3 up, 3 down. He only threw 7 pitches, so very small sample size from Eric Swanson, but it was his first clean inning for the Blue Jays since like May 26th. So it was good to see from Eric Swanson. I thought he looked a little slimmer, which doesn't mean anything, but it does show that you're putting in the work and you're still trying to improve, right? And so I thought that was very good, encouraging stuff from Eric Swanson. What do you want to see from him down the stretch now that he's part of this bullpen?
I am so team Swanson this year. Get him into lower leverage spots right now. Use him as a mop-up role guy, or if we have a huge lead. I don't care. I want to see him get into ball games and then slowly move him along the line and keep him where it's appropriate in the depth chart. When Eric Swanson is on, we've seen how good he can be. And I mean, Chris from the Coach's Sons, I know that, he may or may not hear this, but I'm sure he was a pretty big Swanson guy in his years in Seattle, or I should say year in a minute, because he hasn't been a big league pitcher for that long. But again, he's kind of like what we could see out of him is he's kind of a younger version of Chad Green. And I think he could supply essentially a really big role if he could take over for what Chad Green is currently doing with this club. But again, don't rush him. I don't want, listen, we've already had one bad hiccup for Erik Swanson this year. I want to see him be successful, give him the lower leverage for now, and we'll see where we are, possibly after the deadline.
Yeah, let's see him put on a little bit of a run here, right? Because we know how good Erik Swanson can be. He was very key for the Toronto Blue Jays last season. So if he can come back and he can put it all together, we know what type of relief pitcher we're getting for Erik Swanson. So that's something to really pay attention to in the second half of the season. Down on the farm, Riley, Joey Votto was called up to the Buffalo Bisons as he is getting close to return, but then he was immediately scratched and never got into a game for the Buffalo Bisons. That same ankle injury he's been dealing with all season. Hope it doesn't keep him out long, because I think Blue Jays fans everywhere would like to see Joey Votto at least get into one game with the Toronto Blue Jays here by the end of the season. Ricky Tiedemann got a review done on his elbow. The first results seemed to be okay, and that he avoided anything major with that, but he is going for a second opinion, which is always scary because you never go for a second opinion when your first opinion comes out just fine. So it might be season over for Ricky Tiedemann. And the Buffalo Bisons the other night set a franchise record 19 strikeouts in the game. And the main culprit of that being Bowden Francis, who went back down and got the start in that game. 4 innings pitched, did not allow a single hit. He walked 1 and struck out 8. So it does seem like the Blue Jays are lining Bowden Francis up to come in and start when Yusei Kikuchi is eventually traded in about 2 weeks' time. And good things from the Buffalo Bisons. At least, they're getting the pitching and stuff down there on the farm.
Jesse, I can just set things off the rails for my takeaways at this part in the show. So I'm going to take the train and steer it in whatever direction I very well want. I'm done with talking about the pitcher injuries right now. It's extremely frustrating. The Votto gimmick is whatever it is. He's going to be in the Hall of Fame one day. And speaking of the Hall of Fame, Jesse, you were unaware that this was going on, but the Hall of Fame being inducted is either happening right now or just finishing up, but the class is amazing. And I want to throw some big love to my favorite skipper of all time, Jim Leyland. And of course, the players that are in this Hall of Fame class. I love when a player plays for a franchise their entire careers, win or lose, whatever it is. And for that, we got Joe Mauer and Todd Helton, who were big name guys. Especially when we were younger, man. There was no better pure hitting catcher. And as far as Todd Helton goes, I don't give a crap what they say about Coors Field thing. I think that's stupid. I believe he had more home runs on the road anyways. He was the best first baseman in baseball for a 4 or 5 year stretch in the NL before Pujols got absolutely insane for the Cardinals. And then the other guy, probably one of the more entertaining players that we've got to watch, Adrian Beltre, known for hitting those home runs from one knee. And most notably, his kind of almost looked like he was laughing when he threw that ball. And you know where I'm going with this, the game 5, where, we're playing Texas and Joey Bat's bat flip. I thought he was going to strangle Elvis Andrus when he fielded that ball and threw it to third base, man. And the love relationship with those two are another thing. But I just wanted to get that in because we are Blue Jays channel, but we're also a baseball channel. And the Hall of Fame is a big thing. I know it could be a crock of crap as far as who gets it and who doesn't. But those 4 names, which I just said there, all very well deserving. And I'm glad to see them get into the Hall of Fame. Especially Jim Leyland. I don't know what I have in stocks for Jim Leyland. I've just always liked him. And I know that you're a big Todd Helton guy, same as with me. You're a Rockies guy. And, in their winning years, he was kind of in the twilight, but you need that. And it's good that Todd Helton got a run at the Fall Classic, regardless of the outcome.
Happy for all of them. I do want to make my way to the Cooperstown to go to the Hall of Fame event one day. Maybe I'll cross that list off this winter or something, but it would be very good to see. And congratulations to all 4 players, all very worthy of being in the Hall of Fame. Just to turn things back on the Blue Jays here, Riley, one more point. The Blue Jays are continuing their homestand. We're welcoming a 3-game series to the Tampa Bay Rays. Just really quick, what do you want to see from this team for these 3-game series against the Tampa Bay Rays?
Life. Jesse, I want to see life.
Yeah.
We got to watch George Springer have a blast out there. He loved that he hit that first home run, and kind of overwhelmed by the second one as well. I want to see the boys have fun out there. I want to see the young players have fun as well. This is what it's all about. You're getting paid to play a sport for a living. It can be very stressful at times. Everyone has kind of their own agenda. Mental health is still a very important thing to check on, even in losing in those kind of dog days. Teresa, I agree with you. Be competitive. I'm kind of past that point right now. I'm not going to say sandbag this whole damn operation, but at the same time, too, keep the vibes positive in the clubhouse and on the field. I mean, if we know we're going downhill, still play the game that you've played your entire life and play it with pride, play it with passion, and play it with intensity. But have some damn fun out there. Baseball's supposed to be fun. It's more fun when you win. But you got to remember, at the end of the day, it is just a game, and we'll get a new GM here very soon, boys.
It's all about wins and lessons for the Toronto Blue Jays down at this point. And for these next 9 games, it's only 7 games, I believe, until the trade deadline. I want to see those guys that we are going to trade away get hot. I need to see Justin Turner put some good things together. I want to see Kevin Kiermaier put some things together and then get off of our roster so we can let the Buffalo boys come in, take over, and play really well. So that way we can maximize the return for this players of the Toronto Blue Jays. We'll be back to recap these series on Thursday against the Tampa Bay Rays. We'll have a lot more to say. We'll recap on anything and big that happens. If the Blue Jays make a trade between now and then too, you can bet that we will be here interacting of it as the trade rumors are slowly starting to creep up as we're only 9 days away from what might be one of the biggest trade deadlines in Toronto Blue Jays franchise history. Riley, anything else to add before we get out of here today?
No, that sounds extremely terrifying, though. One of the biggest trade deadlines in Toronto.
Yeah, doesn't it?
History. And not for the good reasons either.
Not for the good reason, yeah.
This isn't us going out and getting a Henderson or a Cone or someone like that, man. This is the opposite end. If you've been following the Blue Jays and you could see potentially your favorite player be off of this team, depending on who it is, whatever. It's not a good time to be a Jays fan, man. And again, listeners, viewers, baseball's supposed to be fun. I mean, I sit here and try and be positive even through the bad crap, and just try and be positive. I mean, I love baseball, love watching it. Those 4 days I didn't get to watch baseball were terrible in the All-Star break. And now we have an off day tomorrow, but baseball is very well back. Second half of the year, we did not start it off with a bang, and the team's going to look different. We're going to shake things up a bit. Not been the best of years, and by my kind of own personal opinion, been the worst year from expectation to actual performance.
You are not alone in that sentiment, Riley. Blue Jays fans everywhere definitely agree with you there. But for Riley McConnell, I am Jesse Burrell. We'll be back next week to recap the Rays series. We'll see you then. In the meantime, let's go Blue Jays.
Thanks, guys.